Nothing could have prepared us for the grand and epic scale of Shadow of the Erdtree. Well, except for the grand and epic scale of the game that spawned it all, Elden Ring. It produced millions of new From Software fans, and a legacy that will go on for generations to come. This is a decade-defining game, so it's time to revisit the original Elden Ring bosses and see how the new dogs, or dragons, or Radons in town stack up. These are all of the major Elden Ring bosses, ranked worst to best. Number 30, Godskin Duo. I am quite sick, by the way, so sorry if my voice sounds a bit off, but some things never change. Water will always be wet, and the Godskin Duo will always suck massive donkey dong. I've talked about it enough times to feel like I've covered my disdain for this pile of poopy. I will say though, this fight has gotten significantly easier to manage as I've gotten better, and that makes it a lot less frustrating from a, oh my god, I have to waste another 10 minutes of my life on this dog doo-doo pile. But it doesn't make the design make any more sense or more fun. Why do they summon each other repeatedly throughout the fight? Why do you have to kill them like 3.5 times? Why is it not like ONS where they just are tied to separate individual health bars? Why do they both have completely independent AI? Why don't they just lose if both of them are dead at the same time, considering they are spawned by summoning each other? I have no idea, there are no logical answers, and it's a shame, because the theme rocks, the arena looks pretty solid, and the characters individually are amazing. It's just too bad that there wasn't more time put into making this fight make more sense logically, or fun-wise, or anything-wise. Any boss after Godshit Duo is a boss I enjoy, so we're already out of the Terabad tier of bosses, by the way. That really says something about what I think of the bosses of Elden Ring as a whole. Number 29, Regal Ancestor Spirit. While there was such a magnificent, ethereal charm in the prancing, elegant Regal Ancestor Spirit on my first playthrough, the novelty has certainly worn off. The lack of a challenge is a part of the problem, as it legitimately feels like I don't have to pay attention. Even if every attack of this lovely creature hits, it's a walk in the park. But it's also because this boss gets spoiled before you even face it. Like, if we're gonna have a special moment with a boss entirely based on atmosphere, we can't have the atmosphere replicated pre-Remembrance boss. Then the only thing carrying the fight is somewhat pulled down. I definitely don't place this boss anywhere near the Godskin Duo for shittery. It's 5 to 10 times better, but it happens to be next in line. Number 28, Commander Gaius. I think that's how you say it. As you might have remembered, I hated the Draconic Tree Sentinel with a passion. I found him to be way too tanky, do way too much damage, be hard to chase down, and have some uncharacteristically girthy hitboxes. This is like Draconic Tree Sentinel on steroids, with acid, and the developers were definitely on acid when they designed him. All jokes aside, I actually still like this boss. I think it's a pretty fair challenge despite the public outcry of BS. I actually enjoy the long combos, the interesting visuals of the purpley attacks, and the emphasis on directional dodging. The main problem here is that the guy just keeps running. It can feel so hard to get a hit in, and then the charge, man, the guy just keeps running. At times it felt like this boss was so tanky, did so much damage, and was so hard to punish that I had to actually follow a flowchart rather than organically see the boss, learn, and react. I had to go to work. It didn't take an insane amount of tries to beat him, but it actually felt like it. So you might dodge this massive string of attacks only to get this one minor piece of chip damage in, for then the boss to just hit you back with 2/3 of your health bar in one hit. Or you might do no damage because he's a slippery buttery boy. The Rider bosses are just not a fair experience for anyone. It's a bit sad they wanted to put so many in the DLC because, well, number 27 is the Putrescent Knight. While I find this boss significantly better designed than Commander Gaius, the main problem is this odd hitbox and rider quality, because it just means there are so many times after you dodge that 20 string attack, you end up hitting the air as the boss wiggles and jiggles. He also has an agonizingly slow delay on so many of his attacks, making it impossible for me to read. And that weird and goofy visual design also makes tracking his movements challenging. That's where the complaints end though, because the quirky design is actually a lot of fun. The OST is an absolute banger, and I actually do love the super long combo string emphasizing perfect dodging. It's a strong boss, I just wish it didn't happen to be on horseback. I love jumping over those blue flames. I think the arena is like Midir the Squeakquel, and learning the boss is fairly rewarding in comparison to the grueling nature of Commander Gaius. So while this was a lot of fun in some aspects, I just couldn't get fully excited about this reanimated goober. Number 26, Golden Hippopotamus. Oh, whoa. Okay, this might seem like I didn't like the DLC, but like I said, these bosses are in the like tier, so don't get your Miyazakis twisted. The main issue with this boss is that, well, it just didn't really do anything too spectacular. The design looks great in Phase 2, but the huge amount of horns can actually block what you're able to see from time to time. Other than that, this fight did feel like a pretty by-the-numbers Elden Ring boss, but that's not really an insult, as the game has by far my favorite average boss score of the series. Like, seriously, put this boss into any other Souls game and it would fare pretty well and have a way deeper moveset. There were a few times I was checking my replays because I didn't really understand how an attack chipped me, but overall it was really fun to learn and was generally quite a fair and easy design for such an overbearing DLC. Number 25, Estelle, Natural Born of the Void. Estelle is a mystical, magical abomination, complete with one of the most cosmically stunning arenas and plenty of enchanting and horrific attacks to match. Unfortunately, it does feel like from time to time that Estelle leans too heavily into the style over substance, as the moveset can feel kinda sluggish and clunky, but all in all, the experience is top-notch. This is the kind of boss that relies so heavily on atmosphere like Regal Ancestor Spirit that subsequent playthroughs just don't really feel quite as special. I can say that the first time seeing this boss might be one of the most special and magical moments of any first-time Elden Ring playthrough, and I think that the difficulty is toned down quite a bit in a much-needed moment of reprieve from the rest of the brutal mid-to-end game. I also love his tendency to teleport and grab, although I just wish that we could also have the terrifying cloned grab that his, other boss variant in the dungeon by the portal to Mogwin Palace uses, because that is one of my favorite attacks of all time in Souls. All in all, this is a 10 for atmosphere and a 5 for moveset, leaving it as a pretty fun Elden Ring boss. Number 24, Needle Knight Lita and Friends. Oh boy, where to start with this one? This might be the hardest boss to rank in the entire list, and there's a million reasons why. There's such a grand and emotional wave that comes at the start of this fight, specifically with the glorious and powerful, melancholic and heroic OST. It screams emotions at you while you hear the dialogue of friend and foe alike. And there's the climax of the many NPC questlines that you'd likely be pursuing throughout your Shadow of the Erdtree journey. And this is a questline you can follow much more easily than many in FromSoft's catalog. In my first playthrough, I felt purely terrible coming to blows with Lita, and on my second, I felt a sense of camaraderie with Sir Ansbach, who nobly came to my aid in this unfair 2v4 battle against the seemingly misguided Lita. And that's another point in its favor. The fight is malleable, and depending on how you've played your Shadow of the Erdtree playthrough, you could get an entirely different set of members in the battle. Your choices matter and tangibly play out in this fight, and it's truly rewarding to see. On the other hand, when it comes to gameplay, this is a pretty standard multiplayer NPC boss. I will say it's a hell of a lot of fun when you summon your buddies through the story, but if you choose to face this solo, it's pure misery. And while many of the NPCs have a pretty cool moveset, it's still NPCs. We're not, that's not something that's going to hold a candle to the best of the best FromSoft bosses. So all in all, this is a mix of powerful emotions. It's a hell of a lot of fun to choose your allies, but it falls a bit short in some of the mechanical components, making it a really fun and memorable boss fight. And if I compare it to something like the god-awful Half-Light barrier before Gale in the Ringed City DLC, this is miles improved, and I'm so glad to see that FromSoft is learning and improving over time. Number 23, Erdtree Avatar. I was in shambles when I took this boss down a second time for him to get back up. Dude was straight up playing Sekiro with the Mercy Pocket.
Heroes never die.
Let's get the big positives out of the way first. I love how different this boss is. It's a really unique design, visually and in terms of the moveset. I like how it takes a chance, goes for it fully, with this wacky design, and is somehow still pretty easy to read. I like the OST, while it's not one of my favorites in Elden Ring, it's a solid track. And I think the death fake-outs are actually really funny, even if they're a bit over the top. I like the mix-up on attacks between phases that are designed to keep you on your toes. Like how in Phase 1 you're required to dodge the homing magic, and in Phase 2 or 3 you're required to sprint. These little touches make the boss have a lot of character, and I love the twisted and toxic arena that we're trudging through. Golden slime and pus cascading from the rotting branches and roots. My main complaint is really that I just can't get a hang of Phase 3 and those really cool looking but impossible to time attacks that look just like a nuclear explosion. Are you supposed to run? Time a dodge? I don't know. I got lucky once and avoided it. But that kind of Phase 3 nuke isn't really something that appeals to me. I'd rather have something a bit more interactive than multiple spammed nukes that require pixel perfect play and no tell. I do, however, appreciate that after the massive attack that the boss needs to take a moment of reprieve to shake it off, giving ample time to respond or heal. Something that not every Elden Ring boss does. Number 22, Meter, Mother of Fingers. While I really want to love this boss, there's just something holding it back. There are so many really cool attacks visually that can be really fun to dodge, like these sweeping laser attacks and the plenty of varied mix attacks that lead to an engaging and reasonable challenge. The arena is really cool, the design is inventive, I just find the boss a little lacking in the fun department. There are a few attacks that almost feel designed to be frustrating, like the spawning of little hand spiders. Although they are mostly inoffensive, it's just kind of annoying. And anytime the side of the boss is involved, those spamming fingies come out, I just have no idea what to do, and that just leads to permanent frustration. So while I don't really have many design complaints with this boss, there are a few minor annoyances keeping it lower on the list. I suppose this really lets you know how competitive this boss pool is for a boss like this to end so low on the list. Number 21, Lich Dragon Vortisax. Now we're to the very good bosses in my opinion, starting with Lich Dragon Vortisax. Oh god, this guy's cool. I have so many things to praise about this boss, from the perfect lightning tracking minigame, meaning you can't spam away at the boss without being punished, the huge, larger-than-life cinematic attacks and unmatched OST give a sense of scale that is hard to beat. I am obsessed with the amazing arena and the phenomenal backstory that leads us here to this battle. I do find it almost impossible to dodge the lightning spinning attack, but it looks so goddamn epic that I don't even care. I want it.
Come on! Strike me!
But with all of that said, the one complaint that just I can't get past is the ungodly low HP pool, and I don't know why FromSoft did it. There are a couple bosses that clearly need a little buff to their HP in the main game, and there is no bigger culprit than Lich Dragon Vortisax. You could even compensate with lowering his damage if there's a worry of the boss being too hard for some reason, but when the boss tends to end so fast that you miss even seeing his coolest attacks, or the OST doesn't get a chance to get to the best part, there's something that needs to be adjusted. I have to actively run around the arena to watch him a little bit more and get all of his attacks out and to hear the OST, rather than just fighting the boss, and it's sad to see him fall this far. But with a couple of counterintuitive attacks and the fact that the fight doesn't really end up being a fight most of the time, I can't place 40 any higher than this. It makes me sad. I'm sad now. Number 20, Fire Giant. One of my hottest takes on the channel is my undying love of the Fire Giant. FromSoft is known for the obsession with ankle-biting these massive, fascinating foes, and it means that you can't even see what the boss is doing. However, as I've mentioned before, the Fire Giant does a fantastic job of making dodging intuitive by using movements in his feet to indicate when an attack might be coming. And the boss fight location, the boss cutscene, which is disturbing in every sense of the word, just adds so much to the experience. And with Torrent, you can cut down on the running time anytime he does any barrel roll to safety, and the boss is a lot easier than people say. I swear to God, he does a lot of damage, but almost always gives ample time to recover from any hit he does, meaning the boss is a pretty doable battle of attrition rather than a one-shot fest. Even on Rune level 1 it wasn't too challenging. I will admit though that Phase 2 is a bit lackluster, as there are a few attacks that can just feel random, like Fire Rain that you can't really accurately predict. And he can land in some janky locations post-roll from time to time, but I can't help but appreciate everything else that the fight does so well, that I always have a huge smile on my face when I fight him. Number 19, Divine Beast, Dancing Lion. I don't know if anybody else has mentioned this yet, but the death stare that you get with these dead, vacant eyes here are terrifying. Like the thing of nightmares. Holy God, if this guy asks you to dance, you run the other way and you run fast. Do not dance with this man. I want to get my one issue out of the way first. From time to time, it can be a bit challenging to tell what the Divine Beast is really doing, as he appears as this like amorphous blob of cloak and wriggling. Once in a while, I do find myself spam rolling for lack of information. However, that's where the negatives end. There's this amazing sense of progression with the fight, as similarly to Soul of Cinder, we have this RNG elemental change that can vastly alter your experience in Phase 2. Phase 1 is relatively straightforward, but Phase 2 throws such a massive array of attacks at you that it can actually be really challenging to get a grasp on the boss at all. I feel like it was pretty brutal to place this moveset as the first boss, but hey, it encourages you to engage in the exploring that has become characteristic of Elden Ring and its first bosses. So, this is a really cool, varied challenge full of inventive moves and a powerful OST that is just a bit tough to read for me from time to time. And this is number 19, holy god, these bosses are amazing. Number 18, Margit the Fell Omen. There isn't really anything I can say about Margit that hasn't been sent to death, but I'll do my best. This boss really defined the entire game. The game will place this insurmountable foe and say, figure it out. You can either hit your head against a brick wall for hours or make it as easy as humanly possible. I had to learn that lesson fast, and honestly, I had to relearn it for the DLC with the likes of the Dancing Lion. Margit's got this iconic entrance and a huge and fun moveset full of punish windows if you choose to learn them. Badass character full of a sense of duty for the very world that seemed to have betrayed him. You can't help but quote his badass delivery and lines, and for good reason. It's an iconic first boss that will go down as one of the best in FromSoft and gaming's history. Number 17, Renala, Queen of the Full Moon. This just might be the most magical boss, and I don't just mean the fact that she's a wizard.
You're a wizard, Harry.
She provides that sense of wonderment and discovery that you really hope to get out of these fantasy worlds, and is a boss that is so fun and easy to learn. And why else do we play these games than to just have that moment of escapism and go to another world that's magical? And for the puzzly first section, it's lifted by the soul children singing lingering melodies in a shadowy library, crawling around as a mystical force floats above, beckoning to them. It could have been as forgettable as Royal Rat Authority, or was it Royal Rat Vanguard? I can't even remember. But the slight narrative twists in the formula keep it engaging. Discovering Phase 2 is like pulling a book back to reveal a hidden chamber. It feels exclusive, like we shouldn't even be stepping foot here, especially on this perfectly still and reflective water. In fact, I think this fight is the best mage fight in the entire series, unless I'm forgetting something. And I'm not counting bosses like Manus as a mage fight. Renala fights almost exclusively with spells, and it's fair and balanced, so much so that I'm actually surprised. Sure, it's not mechanically something that will knock your socks off, but it's perfectly balanced fun. And it's a magic battle that I always look forward to taking on again. Even summoning a dragon was balanced with the limited time it's up. Like, how? Amazing work, FromSoft. Amazing work. You did it. Number 16, Ramina, Saint of the Bud. Ramina really captures that old school Dark Souls charm. From her literal visual design, clearly riffing off of Quelaag and Najka from Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2 respectively, a song that feels straight out of Dark Souls 3, and a simpler moveset that isn't full of 15-hit combos and frequent arena-wide AoEs. She's likely a boss that people won't struggle with quite as much on average, and I loved that. There's nothing wrong with the boss here or there that is manageable. She even missed me from time to time with her attacks, which is not something I'm going to complain about, but it does make it hard to see myself putting this boss in the top 10 with all of this considered. I was somewhat worried that I'd have a hard time hitting her with the huge amount of mobility and slender hitbox, but somehow FromSoft managed to have her wriggling insect body never feel out of reach, making it feel like I was constantly trading blows in a nearly elegant battle. She also takes some of the best aspects of the Malenia boss fight, like the gorgeous color-filled butterflies and visuals, the striking OST callback, and the Scarlet Rot. Wait, I hate Scarlet Rot. Okay, scratch that part, we'll stick with the first two though. She's elegant, beautiful, cool, and highly recommended. I recommend it, you should try it. Number 15, Godric the Grafted. As much as I fell in love with Margit from the first moment, this cutscene was absolutely my first real holy shit moment when it came to Elden Ring. I love how he's oozing with this absolute and pure insanity. From his dialogue and cutscene to even his unhinged OST, I mean, listen to this. And I even more so love the fact that he's actually quite a pathetic character. And that's reflected in his piss-easy boss fight. In any other FromSoft game, this would be considered a mid-level to relatively tough boss, but by Elden Ring standards, this guy is straight out of Weenie Hut Jr., and maybe even Super Weenie Hut Jr., I know. And for all of his bloviating, he crumples like a wet paper bag, and I love that for being such a great reflection of his character, willing to drop to any level of depravity to get a leg up. Get it? Alright, you're not laughing? I'll stop. While I find him a bit too easy on subsequent playthroughs, I feel like he's perfectly tuned for new players as a relatively easy early game boss that can be overcome with careful awareness and timing. Oh boy, here we go. Number 14, Malenia, Goddess of Rot. I know that the Malenia discourse has gotten quite scarlet rotten from time to time, and I'm not here to contribute to that. I find her fight a slightly mixed, albeit awesome bag. Alright, let's go through this, because I'm sure some of you are real surprised to see her this low. While dodging waterfowl isn't the same nightmare it was when I was first learning the boss, which I think still should impact the rating by the way, it still isn't fun. I know there are some janky ways to almost cheat the boss into canceling or avoiding waterfowl. I don't feel like there should be a requirement to study externally to really understand a boss. I should be able to play against the boss, see what's happening, and pretty easily figure out what I need to do to beat it. If I can't achieve what I know I need to do, that's one problem, but to not even know what I'm doing wrong is a totally other issue. With all that said though, pretty much my only problem with Malenia is still waterfowl. It's not predictable. What I mean by this is that the boss should do it once per phase at half health each time. But what seems to happen is that she does it once, or twice, or 3 times per phase, depending on how much damage you've done and how fast. Therefore, if you don't want to have to study or get sleep pots or whatever, you have to play passive and bait it out when you know it's coming. The problem with that is that when you play passive, Malenia sometimes just stands there and wastes time. So the best strategy is to literally just stand away from the boss while she slowly walks towards you, begging she pulls out one attack that can one-shot me with one misstep so that the fight can continue for real. And that's just not fun. But if this was just once per phase, then we would know exactly when it was coming, prepare for it, dodge it, and get back into action. With all of that whining and complaining out of the way though, every other aspect of this boss I love, including the healing. I think it's fantastic for an optional boss to be this hard, to give you the opportunity to best her if you so dare. I think the arena is one of the best in the series, the second phase OST is S+++ tier, thanks to Yuka Kitamura's fantastic work, and I think the entire moveset is fair and punishable. She's even staggerable for God's sake. I love it! I feel such a sense of accomplishment anytime I take her down, and that wouldn't happen without the huge and real sense of challenge that comes from such a beautiful and daunting character. Her cutscenes, both, are iconic and memorable, as is her powerful visual design, voice acting, and presentation. This makes it so hard to rate a boss like this that has elements that are amongst the best in all of gaming, and others that are pretty lame. So I ended up at number 14 for now. Where would you put her? Let me know in the comments down below. Woo! Now that we're through with that, why not drop a like and subscribe? I have Shadow Tree fragments. Number 13, Dragon Lord Placidusax. Once we get into phase 2, this boss is non-stop adrenaline in the best way possible. It turns a pretty immobile, ancient dude that barely looks like he could get out of bed without making creaking sounds into an absolute force of nature. Teleporting was such a magnificent solution to a large dragon fight as well. It ensures that each teleportation and attack, you are at the perfect distance to see the boss, see the entire attack, react, and after some of them even punish. This totally nullifies any camera complaints that people could have about bosses of this size, which often there are many. And there's no denying the cinematic grandeur of the nuclear explosion attack, or the lasers of doom, or the dive bomb of power. I'm just making these names up. I have no idea what the actual names of the attacks are. I just see cool thing and go wow. The only minor drawback to this boss that I can mention is that at times his moveset can be kind of challenging to read. His cadence feels slightly off. Like when he breathes fire, I have no idea where I'm supposed to run half the time. And there are some janky interactions if you choose to run up and hit him on his side. Outside of this minor phase 1 complaint though, it is pure gold. Number 12, Radahn, Consort of Miquella. Holy shit, this is an insane boss, like wow.
Oh my god!
I'm sure this is going to be a hot take, just like Melania, to some for putting it too low, and to some for putting it too high, but hear me out, it's just my opinion after all. Radahn is an amazingly cool boss. Let's just get that out of the way right out of the gate. Phase 1 is a pure, clean fight with a towering knight, something that is perilous to learn, but rewarding to master. The OST, the spectacle, the arena, everything is there, as it will continue to be for the rest of the list. In fact, I think this is the strongest OST of the entire DLC. The varied timings, the punishment windows, the cinematic qualities, I love all of it. The flip side here is that I have several frame drops nearly every time I face this boss. He has a level of damage and AoEs in his Phase 2 that are so overwhelming and challenging to learn and time and tell what's going on that it can be borderline infuriating. He can clip you with one part of a post-attack AoE on a slice that you dodged that leaves you stun-locked, unable to properly dodge the next hit that then proceeds to one-shot you after dodging 10 rapid slices in a row. If that was a long sentence, it's because I need a lot of words to communicate how many things this boss does. That's how busy it is. There happens to be a level of skill expression required here that is, quite simply put, not always fun. You know, I said Phase 1 was something that is perilous to learn but rewarding to master? Well, it's not that rewarding when you have to go through it 50 times in a row just to try to learn Phase 2 where you get one shot by a guy falling out of the sky. There are some attacks here where I quite simply am not sure how to dodge them properly, and I think after this many attempts, it would be something that I should be able to discern from the game, and I feel like I'm not getting that feedback natively from playing over and over again. With all of that said, it seems like this boss is quite similar to Melania. He is similarly divisive, similarly challenging, although even more so, and similarly amazing outside of a couple of complaints. The difference here, and why I place them higher, is because while I find the repetitive spam of waterfowl that you have to bait out to be a notable design flaw, I see my many complaints with Radahn as a design choice that I might have actually just personally tweaked. And in all honesty, it's just a matter of preference. I don't see Radahn as very flawed per se, but not necessarily always my cup of tea. And to be fair to the developers, some of this is absolutely self-imposed. I choose to fight solo, and not use the basic tools the game has provided to me. There is nothing banning me from using mimics here, and self-inflicted challenges that make a boss harder isn't something that is fully fair when calling out the mechanics of a boss as flawed. I just think that I personally would have had more fun if there were less frame-reducing particles flying around, Phase 2 commenced at a slightly lower HP level, the damage or HP of Radahn was slightly reduced, or any of these things were slightly tweaked. I know it sounds like that was a lot to complain about, but to be fair, it's just a straight up fact that this is an awesome boss, and I feel like that pretty much goes without saying. He's epic, well designed, well thought out, has an enchanting OST, beautiful arena, is rewarding to learn most of the time, and provides the peak Elden Ring challenge. All of this is so appreciated, and I think the ranking could slightly change over time. As for now though, up at number 12 amongst the GOATs is where I'd place this amazing boss. I very shortly want to address one other issue, which is that people were upset that it was a retread of Radahn as the final boss of the DLC because that's like reskinning. I had the same problem with the Lawrence Bloodborne discourse. People were saying that Lawrence from Bloodborne is just a reskin of the Cleric Beast. What a disappointing way to end off the DLC. He has so many different attacks that, or like, yes, it was like visually a callback to a previous character, but the fight essentially functions as a totally new fight in every single respect. So I just personally don't get that complaint. Love Lawrence, love Radahn, both Radahns. And yeah, that's just my take on it. Feel free to have your own opinion, but that's mine. Number 11, Starscourge Radahn. Well, isn't that poetic? Radahn versus Radahn in the battle arena, and Radahn wins. Nothing can quite match riding to war with your buddies to slaughter this towering presence of pure, destructive force. The masculine Phase 2 OST gets me so freaking hyped to go to a festival of war. Now I feel like I have to attend one in real life. The scale of everything here is just, wow. The whole fight is built up through this festival beforehand, and the huge run-up to the boss as he fires entire spears to you as arrows, whew, it's a sight to behold, and a gaming experience I'll never forget. It actually feels so much like the end game, like this is the final boss. It's so strange going back to it because I forget it's actually quite early in the game that you do all of this. And that's just something Elden Ring does unstoppably well. My favorite parts of the Souls games were always nearing that end game. the impending sense of doom and finality, the huge boss doors and the paths leading up, a sense that what you were doing truly mattered. And that's what I get out of all these top tier Elden Ring bosses. It always feels like the most important thing in the world, and it's just pixels on my screen. It's insane. The moveset itself is also so powerful. It's long, difficult combos, but also easily punishable with some studying. Phase 2 features one of the coolest transitions of all time, and it's a joy to complete solo or with your raiding party. My only minor complaint, again minor, is that when you choose to do this war thing solo, the run back can be a bit tedious, but that is such a minor complaint in a sea of endless praise that I could dump at the feet of this lore legend and his horsey. And that's part 1. If you're interested in part 2, featuring the top 10 bosses, please feel free to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss it. And please stay tuned because I'm going to be linking the Elden Ring community poll in my top 10 boss video. I hope you all enjoyed and see you later. Peace.